Hello everyone and welcome to this week's video tutorial. This will be the third board discussing the elephant opening versus the pale corner cannon counter. What would be interesting would be that a move that was considered to be terrible in the previous two boards will now actually be the most important move to make in this board. So if you have not seen the previous two videos in the same series, please do go through them before you go through this video. So without further ado, let us begin. Elephant opening, pale corner cannon, b3 plus 1. Now in the first board, r9 plus 1 was played, second board h8 plus 7. Now in this board, p3 plus 1 is played, which is okay. By red shows that he wants to develop material on the right flank. And black will counter with p3 plus 1. Now this will be more or less a symmetrical position of the pawns. This is considered to be a steadfast counter. Another viable counter would be to play h2 plus 3, whereby a possible line would be thus because black had played h8 plus 9 to develop his left horse as an edge horse, black would counter with the 5-6 cannons. And it will be a standoff situation for both colors. The pace would be slow and deliberate, but the room for error would be minimal. So this would be a viable counter. But p3 plus 1 was discussed in the board. So red continued developing his right flank. Black does so likewise. And since black had played h2 plus 3, red would develop his horse h8 plus 9, seeing that developing it as h8 plus 7 would not be ideal because the pawn had been raised. And the development of the horse at this point would become limited. Black counters with r1 equals to 2. Red protects the cannon, and at this point in time, black would play h8 plus 7. Now, unfortunately, although this may seem to be a natural move to make, it would be actually the dubious move that will result in black's downfall in this position. And interestingly, as the authors recommended, black should have played e7 plus 5, which was frowned upon in the earlier two videos. Now, the situation is different from the previous two videos, and please do go through the video and the interactive boards when they are uploaded to understand and compare to see why the difference is so significant. So before we continue, this would appear to be natural, whereby black would try to push the horse and perhaps develop the chariot later on if the cannon moved, etc. And seeing that black had nonchalantly played h8 plus 7, red would immediately attack. Now, how should red attack? He would do so with c8 equals to 7. Because with c8 equals to 7, red is poised to push the pawn forward and gain material. And why it is rather clear now at this point why the authors recommended e7 plus 5, because if the horse moved, red could attack the elephant and attack this very empty flank. So this is why black saw the latent weakness in red saw the latent weaknesses in black's position and attacked very nicely and this targeted approach. Of course, this would be a trade of chariots. Red will lose one move, but he will be more than compensated with this attack. So after trading chariots, this would be the position of discussion for this board. So red is now poised to play p7 plus 1 to gain material. So there are three main counters. The first would be h3 plus 2. The second would be h3 minus 1. And the third would be c4 plus 5. Whereby black counters very aggressively. Now before we continue, would h3 plus 4 be a viable option? Let us see. If h3 plus 4, again red pushes the pawn as planned. Black tries to defend. p7 plus 1. As can be seen, black's position at this point in time is very awkward. The elephant is very poorly positioned, and red will continue his attack with c2 plus 3. Now this is a very powerful move, threatening to capture the elephant, forcing the elephant to move away, etc. Now if the horse moved here, this cannon will capture the elephant. He cannot move here, and the only possible move would, the elephant will be lost. So black would be usually forced to retreat the elephant, for example. And when doing so, red will now play p3+1 for this powerful tactical combination, whereby he will sacrifice the pawn as a cannon mount to allow the cannon to capture the black horse. So if black moved his horse to safety, this pawn would charge across the river, and again black would be all sorts of trouble. Black would thus be thrust into a predicament. So that is why h3+4 is not a viable option. So let us go to variation A, whereby red plays h3+2 to move his horse to safety. Now, although this move can temporarily offset the threat of losing the horse, but black's material will now become disarray. So his material become uncoordinated. Red pushes the pawn forward to attack the elephant. e3+5, p7+1. Again, red's position is very poor, and instead of c2 equals to 3, because now the horse is on the other file, it's a little bit different. Red would attack with r1+1. You'll be prepared to traverse the chariot to attack black's very weak right flank. 5, 1+6 to threaten the cannon, forcing black to play a6+4. Now this would be the best defensive option for black. If he tried to play c4 equals to 2 to attack the horse, red would be very aggressive with this move, threatening to capture the horse, and play this move. Red will now threaten to capture the edge pawn, and he will be able to get to the bot corner. And another possible option would be to play c2+1 to dislodge the black horse, etc., and black will be on source of trouble. And black would have many things to worry about at this point. So that is why c4 equals to 2 is not a good idea. And c7 equals to 8. Red is prepared to push the pawn to the bottom rank should the horse move, thus pinning this horse indirectly. c+4, a defensive measure. If black played advance the chariot, black would push the pawn forward to protect his horse by threatening the chariot. But black could now take his time to play his h8+7. This move would now allow red to develop his material, and as can be seen, for the development of material wise, red would be far ahead. And red's men are now all ready to go on the attack. So obviously red would have the advantage in variation A, whereby h3+2 was played. Now in variation B, red will retreat the horse to protect the elephant, such that if red pushed the pawn, he would capture the pawn gladly. But inevitably, this would mean that black would now suffer a loss in tempo, because he had advanced the horse and retreated it one move, and this would be a very rather awkward positioning of the black horse. So how should red attack? He would continue by capturing the pawn for this very simple no-nonsense direct approach. Now red would translate his the earlier advantage he had into a material advantage by gaining more pawn, and black would play e7+5. Now this move would be to dislodge to threaten the red cannon and dislodge it. Now if he played r9+1, red would move the cannon forward, threatening the pawn, attacking the horse, and play h8+7. This horse would now be protected by the cannon, and black cannot threaten the cannon, otherwise red would threaten, counter, capture the pawn, threaten the chariot, forcing it away, for example, and then capture the elephant to gain an advantage. Red will still have the advantage in this situation. His horse is ready to go, etc. Red can push the pawn forward at any time, and the awkward positioning of this black horse would be an issue that black will still have to deal with. So that is why r9 plus 1 is not a good idea. Now what about playing c4 plus 5 to try to gain material? Black could simply play r1 equals to 3 to protect the horse, and he will still be on the safe side. He could then play a4 plus 5 to dislodge the black cannon, thus forcing black to fall further behind in terms of tempo. So e7 plus 5 would be black's best defensive option, but nonetheless, red would now start attacking. e7 plus 5, black can prevent the cannon from capturing the pawn, but again the elephant will be placed in a rather awkward position. Red will now play p7 plus 1, preparing to push the pawn across the river, forcing the elephant back. So we can see that the black had lost even more tempo with 1, 2, 3 by moving this elephant 3 times. 7, the horse now gains development. And at this point in time, red would have more pawns, 1, 2, 3, 4 versus black's 3 pawns. He would also have secured the major or focal points of the board. r1 equals to 3 will be a possible way to develop the chariot. And red would have secured the advantage. So variation B of playing h3 minus 1 would see that black fall further behind in terms of tempo. What about variation C, whereby black counters very aggressively with c4 plus 5. With c4 plus 5, this cannon would now be protecting the horse, so should red push the pawn forward, black can capture the pawn without any scruples. Now this is a rather stubborn counter. It will protect the horse, otherwise if it moved, it will be a trade of cannons, so the threat of this cannon on this file would be no more. And this would be the second position of discussion for this board. There are 2 main variations. The first would be c4 equals to 7, and the last would be c8 equals to 9. But before we continue, would e7 plus 5, moving the elephant now at this point in time, be a viable option? Let's see. If he did, p7 plus 1 would be played. What about h3 plus 4? Again, red will continue to attack by pushing the pawn forward, so black would not be able to save himself or get himself out of this dilemma. And also, the development of this flank is still a major issue. So in variation CA, c4 equals to 7, black directly trades away the cannon, hoping to gain some form of try to give some form of compensation and even the odds as he tries to claw his way back into the game. Red captures as he wants to use the cannon to maintain pressure on this file. e7 plus 5, p7 plus 1, h3 plus 4, p7 plus 1 to threaten the horse, h4 plus 5. Black tries to gain a pawn in the process. Red moves the chariot away, otherwise it will be captured. This cannon is protected by the horse and the cannon. After trading material, h8 plus 7 will be the better option. If he played c2 equals to 7, this flank will be empty and viable to attacks by black's cannon. And black would have to use 1 or 2 moves to try to defend himself from the potential chariot cannon combination attacking his file. So that is why h8 plus 7 would be the better move. Not only would red get to develop his cannon, he would avoid any potential attacks by the black cannon on this flank. And since the elephant moved, red will now push this pawn across the river, and again black will be placed in a dilemma. Now there will be new problems to face. For example, if black captured, red will capture, and black would be forced to lose either his horse or his elephant, which usually red would protect the horse. Maybe you make this move, etc. But losing the elephant at this point in time would mean that black's defense would now become very weak, because he would not have a full guard, even though he would have one extra pawn. But it can be viewed that red had used one pawn to sacrifice to trade for the elephant, which would be a very acceptable trade-off. So there are many things that black would still have to worry about, but this would suggest that variation CA of play C4 equals to 7 would not be viable. And now let's go to the last variation of C8 equals to 9, whereby black tries to develop his left flank, get the chariot into action as quickly as possible, so that he will not fall so far behind. But if this was so, red would now play h3 plus 2 to prevent the development of the chariot. Now this is a commonly used tactical combination, whereby the horse is developed to the external rib file. The second and eighth file are known as the external rib files, and to prevent the development of the enemy chariot. And also with this move, p3 plus 1 is a very big threat that black cannot afford to ignore. And by pushing h3 plus 2, red would now force a trade of cannons, which black must accept. Again, as can be seen, the chariot cannot move. p3 plus 1 is an eminent threat. Black would be forced to defend in this manner. r3 plus 3 is a good move to prevent black from attempting a sneak attack from the edge file. a6 plus 5, h2 plus 3 to threaten the cannon. And black would have to retreat this cannon in this manner. Now the line of thinking behind this move was that black did not want to play r9 equals to 8, because if he did, black would go capture the cannon, threaten to go for the elbow horse checkmate, and black would be forced to try to prevent the horse from moving h1 plus 3. But in doing so, it will be a trade-off material, but red would gain a pawn that across the river. And it is obvious that at this point in time, when the game is entering the late mid-game phase, or even perhaps the early endgame phase, this pawn would become a major threat. And this chariot is very powerful in that it is protecting the pawns and preventing the black horse from attacking, or the black chariot from attacking. And piece-wise, red's one chariot, one horse, one cannon combination would be much better than black's one chariot, two horse combination. So red would have the advantage in many fronts. c9 minus 1, black tries to keep his cannon alive. to 2, red again prevents development of the chariot. 7, p3 plus 1, and black would be placed in a dilemma. Now red has, after making this move, obviously black would not want to capture the horse, otherwise the pawn would gain access across the river and become an immediate threat. And if he did not want to, red would have the option of playing r2 plus 4 to threaten this horse. So red will be attacking fast and furious, applying a lot of pressure on this flank, and there will not be much that black can do about it. So this would bring us to the end of this spot. Short recap from the eyes of black. Plus 5, pale corner cannon, and this spot p3 plus 1 is played, all considered orthodox. This one also. Another option would be to play h2 plus 3, whereby in the end, because red would usually develop his horse as an edge horse, black would get to play the 5-6 cannons, and he would still be able to put up a very playable game. 3. So far so good. Because h2 plus 3, red will develop his horse as an edge horse. R1 equals to 2, R9 equals to 8, and dubious move. Because black had not considered the latent weaknesses on this line. Red immediately attacks, offering a trade of material. After trading material, black would not have resolved the threat on this line either. So, position of discussion, variation A, h3 plus 2. Again, red goes on the attack by pushing the pawn, attacking the elephant. If black captured, he will lose his elephant. So, the elephant to safety, using the elephant to an awkward positioning, getting in the way of the black horse, etc., and not providing any defense on the bottom rank. Red immediately plays R1 plus 1 for the rank chariot to attack this flank. Good move, pinning the horse indirectly. If it moved, bam, check. And black is forced to play c8 plus 2 as a prophylactic measure against red's r4 plus 4. r6 plus 4, sorry. And as can be seen, red will now take his time to develop his material to the best possible manner. And he would have the advantage firmly in hand. Again, black cannot capture the pawn, or red would deliver a check and lose their horse. Variation B, h3 plus 4 is not possible because red would have this very nice tactical combination of threatening the pawn after getting the elephant to a very precarious position. So this would be the extra variation that was given. Variation B will be black will compromise and relent and buckle under red's pressure by retreating the horse to protect the elephant. But this would mark the start of losing tempo, and red would continue his attack nicely with c7 plus 3. Although this is usually not advocated, but in this situation is a viable approach whereby red would now would now translate his earlier gains into a material advantage and still be attacking. e7 plus 5 to dislodge the cannon would be the best move. r9 plus 1 is not a good idea because red would develop his material nicely. c4 plus 5 for counter would also not be viable because the chariot is always ready to protect the horse. After e7 plus 5, red would push the pawn forward, threatening to capture the pawn. Black trades pawns, but his elephant is in a precarious position, and this pawn will now be threatening to cross the river. Defense, h8 plus 7, and we can see that red's development is far superior to black's. Last variation, variation C, c4 plus 5, red attacks, tries to counter nicely using the cannon to protect the horse, not fearing p7 plus 1 anymore. But red would protect the horse nicely. h3 plus 4 is not a good idea because black would get to adjust his formation and the situation would be simplified and black would still be in contention. 1 plus 3, position of discussion number 2. Two main lines, c4 and 7 and c8 equals to 9. Now e7 plus 5 is not viable because p7 plus 1. Likewise, p3 plus 4 is not viable because of p7 plus 1, and black would be faced with the threat of either losing his elephant or pawn. Variation CA, c4 equals to 7. Black trades material, but positioning wise, red is far superior. Again, the attack on the horse. Black tries to gain some form of compensation by capturing black's central pawn. h8 plus 7 is better than c2 equals to 7 because the cannon could still be used to limit the development of the material on left flank. See, once c2 equals 7 were made, black black will actually have a chance to try to counter attack. R8 plus 7 will be a threatening move. If e7 plus 5, red could capture the elephant immediately. So red would not have achieved much success with c2 equals 7. Instead, h8 plus 7 would be a better move. e5 plus 3. Since the elephant moved, red will now attack from this file. This very menacing move. Black, if black captures, the chariot will now threaten the horse and the elephant. Of course, red will usually protect the horse but lose the elephant, and in going to the endgame phase, black's defense would be weaker and red would have a much better chance of success. Last variation CB. c8 equals to 9. Black tries to claw his way back into the game with this very aggressive counter. h3 plus 2 to prevent the chariot from developing. c4 equals to 7. After trading material, red is still pinning this very important file. Piece 3 plus 1 is still a threat that black cannot afford to ignore. But in doing so, red will now protect the pawns, allow red to play r3 plus 3 to protect the pawns. Attack. Red does not allow r9 equals to 6 to happen by making this move. Black retreats. And if he instead played r9 equals to 8, the black chariot will be forced to pin the red horse, otherwise there will be an elbow horse checkmate. And again, p3 plus 1 would happen, red would have the advantage. 3 equals to 2. And this is a very powerful position for black. So interestingly, we can see that in the previous two boards, black's e7 plus 5 was considered to be a bad move, but it was actually the advocated move in this board instead of h8 plus 7, which would seem to be a natural development of the pieces, which seemed to be the correct thing to do, but this would actually be a major mistake. And as mentioned earlier, please go through the previous two videos and so that you can appreciate and understand the differences between these three positions for this opening system. So thank you, and if you like the work that I've been doing, please do subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you.